So when we look at how to approach marketing to Hispanics, oftentimes it begins like what you see here on this page. It's about reaching that 30% of the population, that Spanish-speaking, Spanish-dominant, unacculturated segment. And it's normally been something where the marketer is saying, you know what, I'll just translate my material into Spanish, I'll sprinkle it into our general market campaign, and we'll call it a day. And what tends to happen when this approach is taken is that we end up with a one-size-fits-all approach. And as you'll recall, I mentioned that there's at least 21 different nationalities represented here in the U.S., a wide range of language skills and backgrounds and interests and affinity. And when you do the one-size-fits-all, what you tend to do is you tend to turn off the majority of the people. You're discounting for languages and nuances in interactions and communications. You're generalizing and forgetting about the diversity in the market. You're forgetting that, today's Hispanic has realized that a lot of the stuff that happens in the translations from English to Spanish is watered down. So there tends to be a mistrust among what's being translated if it's just a strict translation and not a full-blown targeted plan that's reaching them. And you're only accounting for a small percentage of the population. 30% is a good number when you're doing a campaign, but there's such a bigger swath of the population that can be hit, and then also include the Spanish. And so that's why at Zocalo we start with a different approach. What we say is let's reach the biggest segment of the population first with a geo-targeted in-culture approach. And what that means is that we're going to be hitting the 70% of the population that identifies as bicultural or English dominant. And why does this impact us or give us a stronger opportunity to impact the population? Well, we're starting with a population that tends to be comfortable with English or speaks fluently in English. So a lot of your transcreation or translation efforts are minimized at first. You're able to go with whatever's happening in your general market campaigns in terms of brand knowledge, brand awareness, campaigns as a starting point. And then, of course, we strongly recommend that you take the culture into approach and realign, redefine, transcreate and transform your campaigns to make sure that you're reaching that Spanish ancestry population, that Latino population, in a way that's going to be relevant to them. And then, of course, geo-targeting by making sure that you're aligning the strategy depending on where in the country you're trying to deploy that strategy. In California, with such a strong Mexican population, you want to make sure that some of that Mexican alignment is there, that you're hitting their cultural nuances, their the idioms that they use, their approach to life. If you're in New York, which has a stronger Puerto Rican or Dominican population, you might want to align there a little different and choose the words that you use and the spokespeople a little different. So when you start with bicultural English dominant approach, you start with the biggest and fastest growing part of the Hispanic population. You're speaking in the language that's easier to be accessed right away, although remembering the Spanish plays a strong role in it, and even the Spanglish as a growing opportunity. And you take advantage of generational influences then to get the conversation going. So that means you start with your English-speaking person in that family, but you understand that because of the Hispanic cultural tendencies to be very connected with the extended family, you're going to hit the Spanish-speaking grandmother or second generation or third generation or first generation folks that are part of that family, because that English-speaking person is going to be your access point to get to that Spanish speaker in that family. So you're not discounting the Spanish speaker by any means. You're just accessing them in a different way that allows you to have bigger opportunity. And it's always about focusing on the behavior and the culture, adapting in a geographical aware manner. So it gives you right away, right off the start, an opportunity to hit the biggest part of the population right away. What we do then is we take what we call the Zocalo way to engage with these folks from a social media word-of-mouth perspective. And it's a six-step approach that we're able to apply across any brand, across any brand that we're representing or talking about, and taking them through a process that's an ongoing process that allows us to understand where the conversation is at and how we best engage it. And we start with knowing what the conversation is happening. We do what we call the digital footprint analysis, which is a qualitative way for us to know where, how, and why a brand is talked about and recommended. And when we know this, it gives us a good baseline, a good starting point to knowing where do we need to adjust our conversation, where do we need to start, what's the most important things to head off right away. This is where we would identify whether or not we're going to start in Spanish, in English, in Spanglish, in which part of the country, you know, what kind of people are talking about this. Is this more towards moms, towards college students? Is it going to be a generational play right from the beginning? All that starts by taking a step back first, listening to the conversation, and analyzing and seeing what's happening there. We take it then and we formalize our conversation approach through what we call a shareable story. We spend some time with the brand identifying the ways that they would like the social media conversation to go. And by identifying this conversation and crafting it, we're all able to move forward in a unified way in promoting those conversations and encouraging those conversations and curating those conversations so that the brand is well represented. We work then along the way to identify the top influencers within that category, whether it be bloggers or influential people in those communities, or peer influencers, or tastemakers, whoever it happens to be, and we build those into, and we track those in what we call Zocalo, and it's proprietary software that we have developed that I'll tell you more about in just a few moments. We continue on in our process then to engage in the conversations, driving them proactively with sparks of online and offline activities. So it's more than just posting on Facebook or Twitter. It's more than just having a tagged video on YouTube. It's about an ongoing series of conversations that really takes into account the social and social media to get conversation going that's organic, that's easily replicated, that's easy for folks to pick up and keep moving forward. And then, of course, we throw in different activations along the way to just kind of bump that conversation up and keep it moving and keep that interest going. We work along the way also to protect what's happening to our brands online and in the word-of-mouth space by regularly and on a daily basis monitoring what's happening in the space and being prepared to then mitigate, integrate, engage, and establish the proper conversations that need to be happening. And we do this in both Spanish and English along the way. And then, of course, you have to measure, measure, measure. We have a very robust measurement suite that's won multiple awards that allows us to go in, listen to the space, adjust, analyze, and make the changes that we need to make sure that we have a successful campaign. So let me tell you a little bit more about some of these parts of this Zocalo way that we do. I mentioned that we want to be connected to the influencers that are important in the space, and we know that Latinos tend to respect and value the opinions of credible authority figures within their sphere of engagement. And this could be everything from community leaders to friends to extended family members. And so part of our process is to identify all these people ahead of time, and through our tracking mechanism, be able to keep an ongoing relationship with these folks so that then we can tap into them for the conversations that need to be happening. And we're doing this on an ongoing basis. So we have in our database pre-existing levels of context that we are engaged with on a regular basis, making sure that we know what they're talking about, how they like to communicate, where they're communicating, and the hows and the whys as well. And we set up then influencer channels based on the different brands that we're representing so that we can then target our conversation in the spaces where it matters the most. And that tends to be the most influential in the word-of-mouth spaces. And then managing these advocates is really important. So we've launched something called Zocalo, which is a management tracking engagement portal that allows us to keep a running track of who it is that we're engaged with, what it is that they're saying, when it is that we're engaging with them, and the sentiment of how it is that they're representing or talking about the brands. And all of our clients have access to this tool that allows us on a real-time basis to see what's the healthiness of our conversations in the space that we're talking about.